Welcome to Advent. And so we light our first candle for hope. I have always loved Advent because my family grew up sharing an Advent ritual, which I have copies of. You can have a copy. So for me, it was always this preparation of time before Christmas. You know, many of us love Christmas or have all sorts of different things and feelings and memories that go around with Christmas. But for me, Advent is like the center, which I know is not necessarily normal, at least in American families. So what I like about that is that it reminds us that Christmas isn't just a day, but it's a preparation time. And we see this same kind of preparation and ritual is part of many different faith traditions. Yom Kippur does it. Ramadan, there's a lot of time of preparation. We do it at Lent in the spring. This is part of this time of preparation and reflection is a normal part of a spiritual life, is what that comes down to me. And so with Advent, we start with hope. And I'm going to read you the revealing word definition of hope. Those of you who were in the Christmas class, this may sound familiar. Hope is the expectation of good in the future. It is a quality, good as far as it goes, of sense mind because it's subject to time. Faith is a certain knowledge that our good is ours right now. It is of God and it goes beyond time and space. And so, even though hope is the traditional word theme for today, you may have noticed the daily word was faith. And some people like to say faith because they think that that's better. Yes, and you have to have hope first. Hope is the expectation of something happening, while faith is the knowing that it will. And so sometimes you have to have the expectation first. Sometimes you even need a wish first. Wishing is like maybe thinking that maybe it'll happen. Hoping is expecting it to happen, and faith is knowing that it will happen. They're a continuum. They're all important parts of the puzzle. I have no problem with hope as the beginning because we're at the beginning of a journey. And when you're at the beginning of a journey, when you're on a journey, there's two important things that happen when you're on a journey, right? You have to get ready, pack your bags, make sure you have your chains in the car if you're going over a mountain pass, whatever it is. Maybe you don't do that here in Alaska, but that's what we did in Washington. Made sure the chains were in the car. And then the second part is then you have to actually go, right? So there's two really good stories from the Christmas story that illustrate these things. And then first we start with Elizabeth and Zechariah. Do you all remember them? They're part of the Christmas story. They're kind of the prequel to the Christmas story. And they were getting on in years. That's the words they use in the Bible. They were getting on in years. And they had not had children. Zechariah was a priest, and so he'd gone to do his weekly rotation at the temple. And he actually got to go in. Not everybody gets to go into the temple. And he went in, and he had a vision, or an angel, or however you want to call it, and said, your wife Elizabeth is going to, have a baby, and this is going to be what we would call John the Baptist. You're going to name him John, and it's going to be a big deal. And Zechariah went, we're old. And so then, of course, the angel said, aha, now you don't get to talk until the baby's born, and you and you do all the, I'm having a moment. Yeah, not this. When you name him, that's it. That's what I was looking for. Name him, because tradition would be for the baby to be born after the father, and he had to say no. His name is supposed to be John, so that was a thing. And so when he came out of the temple, he couldn't speak because he'd had a moment of doubting. Oops. And everybody knew something important had happened, but he couldn't tell them what it was. So then he goes home, and lo and behold, his wife is indeed pregnant. And so here's what she does. She goes away and takes the time. She goes away to prepare. And then, of course, she's supposed to be a distant relative of Mary's, and so she has the baby, and the baby, John, becomes the prequel, once again, to Jesus. And according to the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, Charles Fillmore, John the Baptist signifies a high intellectual perception of truth, not yet quickened of spirit. So, the before Jesus. And he did John the Baptist did a lot of important things. He was really preparing the way for people to hear Jesus' message in a lot of ways. And his parents were resigned to completing their lives without children. That was what they thought was their lot in life. And yet, they held that space of readiness. Maybe not hope that they thought that they were going to have children, but they were in that place of readiness to know what was theirs to serve in the way that was theirs to serve. And then in that way, they were able to foreshadow, be part of the story of the coming of the Anointed One. That's what they called Jesus, was the Anointed One. That's what Christ means, is the Anointed One. It's a whole other story. We're going to get into that. So, another day. So we all know, we've all heard me say that we all have the divine spark, right? We all have that Christ potential in us. And so that's what this time of Advent is for, is remembering, because sometimes we forget that we have that spark, and then allowing that to be reborn in us. Every year we're allowing now, theoretically, we would allow that Christ to be reborn in us every day, every moment. Sometimes we forget, so we have Christmas to remind us to get back on track, right? And so then the other part of this, so that's the getting ourselves all together, right? The story of Elizabeth and Zechariah saying yes to this journey. Well, I don't know how much they got to say yes, but doing this journey, making this space, preparing. And then when we go on a journey, we have to go, right? So then we have the Magi. Magi, three kings, the wise men, however you want to call it. I go with Magi because then we can leave the space open that possibly there might have been a lady along. And they weren't probably kings, so there's that too. Learned ones. So they see a star in the east, and this bright light that they saw was in the right house, and it was in the right place to mean the fulfillment of prophecies. Because they were learned, it made sense to them that something important was going on. And so they said, we need to go check it out. And so they hopped on their camels and off they went. But it wasn't nearly as easy as just printing out an itinerary from Google Maps and, going off. I mean, this was a big deal. This was a big undertaking. Probably involved a lot of money, probably involved a lot of people. And, I mean, think about leaving your home for 5 or 6 months to go do something like that. This is a big deal. This story probably was all made up to make the story make sense with the prophecy, but what they were saying at the time was that this was a big deal for someone to do that, because the people who were reading the story when it first was happening would see the symbolism of that. And so they had both hope that it was what they were hoping they thought it was, but then they had enough faith to actually go. Because that's a big journey to undertake, right? And so what makes these stories continue to be told year after year, I think, is that it sparks our own hope. You know, the people at the time had a hope. People at the time of Jesus, the people in that very important period after his death when Christianity became a thing, because it could have not, they had a hope that something would be different. They had a hope for more understanding and hope for the kingdom of God. They were looking for a time. They thought the kingdom of God was going to be a time when we were all in the same level and we were all going to have what we needed. They thought it was going to happen tomorrow. They had maybe more faith than I do about that happening tomorrow. But they had a hope for something different, and that ignited a fire in them to act in these new ways and behave in these new ways and do things that were potentially putting themselves in trouble. There was a lot of martyrdom happening, right? But why? Because they had this hope that something would be different and that this was the way to make it happen. And so this Christmas time, this beginning of Advent, is that same hope for each of us. I mean, I have hope, continue to have hope that our world will find more peace. I continue to have hope that we can live in a world where we're all equal, we're truly equal. And we all have the same opportunities. This is the same hope that they had 2,000 years ago. And so this is the beginning of Advent. It's okay to be in that place of expectation is the word, right? Expectation that these things can happen. Because otherwise, if we don't have at least the glimmer of expectation that these things can happen, then why do we even try if we don't think that they can, right? And so we start with hope. And Advent is a journey, and so we'll continue to move through peace and love and joy and to celebrate that Christ being born inside of us. But this week, we would just remember that it is happening. And so not only do we hope for, affirm, believe in that birth of that, or rebirth, or reawakening, or re-knowing that Christ spark, the divine spark, is alive in each of us. We can see and know that for all the people of the world. What if tomorrow everyone in the world woke up to knowing their divine inheritance? I keep hoping, keep praying, keep affirming, keep working towards that. That'd be Christmas. Yeah! So, that's all there is to it. So as we go through Christmas, this Christmas season, and all the busyness, activities, Christmas songs, some of which are more God-centered than others. We'll go with that. How about that? We get to choose to live in that place of remembering who we are and who we've come here to be, and knowing that that truth is true for everyone. That's the true hope of Christmas. And I was going to sing a song, but since my voice is a little crackly, I think I'm not gonna. So, there we go.